Got it.
Yeah. So good day, everyone. I'm Artemis and welcome. This talk is being presented through Public Relations Committee of California Zoroastrian Center, CZC. This committee was formed in 2020 and operates under CZC Board of Directors. We welcome questions and all individuals interested in learning more about the teachings of Zarathushtra. Devotion to Wisdom is the first public talk sponsored by this committee, and we hope to have more interactive sessions in the future. Now, it is with great pleasure that I introduce our speaker today. I met and started working with Mr. Navid Mansourian over a year ago, and during this time, I've come to respect him as a knowledgeable and an amazing person who lives by the teachings of Zarathushtra. Navid has been a student of the Gathas and Zarathustra's teachings for 25 years. He currently serves on the California Zoroastrian Center's Public Relations Committee, helping people who'd like to learn more about Zarathustrian philosophy. Navid Jan, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Artemis John. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. I'm so glad I connected with you in the Public Relations Committee, and I'm so excited for this work to get underway. Let me go ahead and try to share my screen. Let me get this going. All right. Can everyone see this all right? Nope. Let's go. Does this show up? Does the slideshow show up?
Yes.
Perfect. Awesome. So yes, today we wanted to begin a conversation today on the message of Mazda Yasna, or the philosophy of Zarathustra. I wanted to kind of first start this off and mention this as a thought catalyst. That's the intention of this presentation. This is not a one-way talk. What I'm hoping to do is I'll share some context on Zarathustra's teachings from the Gathas, which I've learned over the years, mainly from looking at and working through a lot of the scholarly works of several Mazda scholars that I really respect deeply. We're fortunate to have Dina McIntyre here, who is one of those scholars I very much revere and respect, and I've learned so much from. In addition to Dr. Jafari and Dr. K.D. Irani, I do have an acknowledgements and links section at the end of the presentation. So I do want to start that up front and say thank you for this amazing work. I've learned so much from all of you. I'm hoping that as Mazda encourages each individual to think for oneself and utilize the divine within our good mind and search for truth, the goal of this presentation is for us to begin this conversation and be a thought catalyst. So I'm looking for, I'll probably talk for about 25, 30 minutes, just share some context of where I've learned, give an overview. And the hope is that we have a discussion together in the remaining time, and we can talk about how we look at improving our existence. Does that sound like a good plan with everyone? All right, let's get started. So what is the core message of Zarathustra? And I think before we fall into this message, I want to start with one quick thought. I think it's really important for us to try to think about this message and the teachings of Zarathustra with a clean slate, however possible. The world we live in is biased by all the beliefs in the worldview that we see prevalent. And this is influenced by many, many religions, philosophies, perspectives that came much longer after Zarathustra's time. So I want to kind of throw that out there as like, please try to keep an open mind and think about this as a fresh way of looking at our reality. This might look familiar to Dina, and again, I think this is a very perfect way of teasing kind of the overall kind of core message of Zarathustra that she has put together, and I'm borrowing it from her. But in essence, Zarathustra teaches a system, a way of looking at our reality that is timeless. And I think the first step here is that we are throughout our lives confronted by choices, and we should then use our minds and our hearts to search for the truth, for what is right and good in all aspects of our reality. And we do this by choosing it, and choosing it with every thought, with every word, with every action we take, and through active engagement of the world. We are not rejecting it. We're not isolating ourselves. We need to engage the world and make it a better place. Like we're saying here, then perfecting our world and ourselves until we become one with the divine, until we realize the divine and become part of the endless lights. And I think this is a beautiful metaphor. We'll discuss it more. Again, thank you, Dina. I think this is just such a beautiful way of teasing, I think, the overall message. And we'll kind of dive into this more as we go through this discussion together today. And I'm looking forward to learning more from each other. Before we do that, I wanted to just share a couple slides on a brief history of that's relevant here, just to set the context and again, to put some things in frame for us. This photo is from the British Museum. I took this myself actually when visiting London with my wife, and it is from King Artaxerxes III from the 4th century BCE. He was an Achaemenid king, and the inscription is really beautiful for me personally. What it reads is, it says, "A great God is Ahura Mazda, who created this earth, who created yonder sky, who created man, who created happiness for man, and who created me, Artaxerxes." What I think is amazing, and again, I want everyone to maybe think about this throughout as we talk, and I'd love to hear about it in the discussion. Happiness for mankind, for humankind, is on par with creation of the skies and the heavens, which is like an amazing thought if you really, really let that kind of serve some meditative thought there. Oh, sorry, let me push this forward. There we go. So, quick couple slides on history. Zarathustra called his teachings Daina Vangui. This means good conscience. A little later, some of his disciples coined a new term, Mazda Yasna, meaning devotion to wisdom or worship of wisdom. And this is very similar, if you think about it, to the Greek philosophia, which means love of wisdom. I often hear this from my friends when I'm talking to them around, hey, are you religious? Do you believe, is Zarathustra's message a religion or is it a philosophy? And I think lots of scholars have written about this as well. And again, if we think about devotion or worship of wisdom, worship, and we'll get to this from Zarathustra's perspective, is basically through our life and through our acts. And this is very much inclusive of love. And I think, in my personal opinion, his teachings, Zarathustra's teachings, is actually a spiritual philosophy that's really focused on improving our existence, our reality, through self-realization and realization of the divine. And we're going to get to understand this a little bit more, obviously, through this talk, and I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts. A quick background on his teachings, Zarathustra himself. They're captured in 17 songs called the Gathas in an extinct Iranian language called Avestan. What's important to understand is Avestan was not well understood completely, and to this day probably is not, until linguists decoded it in the 18th century, after noticing a lot of similarities with Vedic Sanskrit. This is an important distinction for us to think about because as we look at lots of various translations of the Gathas, the issue for us to think about is often the translator or the linguist is bringing in their existing worldview. And it's something that we need to think about as we use our own good mind, again, which is part of the core message of Zarathustra. And we need to think through what we think these messages and these words mean for us. In terms of time frame and region, linguistic evidence dates the Gathas to around 1700 BCE. So this is all over 3,700 years ago. And Zarathustra was part of the Iranian pastoral tribes living in eastern Greater Iran, maybe in Khwarezmia, maybe near the Aral Sea. We don't know exactly, but the language is classified as an Eastern Iranian language. The philosophy itself was very influential during the Achaemenid, Parthian, and Sassanid Iranian empires that spanned over 1,100 years. And as you can see, this is a map of the Achaemenid Empire. The span of influence of these ideas spread throughout the empire. So you have ideas influencing classical Greek philosophy all the way in the West. You have Egyptian and China and India in the East, basically all influenced. So these ideas spread all throughout the empire, and Zarathustrian ideas were quite influential. Zoroastrians were severely persecuted following the Muslim invasion of the Sassanid Iranian Empire, and the religion declined in prevalence over the subsequent centuries, but has survived. And I think it's seeing a tremendous revival as of late, again, following this new understanding or better understanding of Gothic of the Gothic Avestan and the language, and our ability to talk through Zarathustra's core message. All right, so let's dive in together into what is the overall framework for Zarathustra's teachings. The foundational component is Asha, which is often translated as truth. In the Gathas, the divine is the source of all goodness, and the creation that Ahura Mazda, Zarathustra's name for the divine, conceives of is his wisdom, and his wisdom is called Asha. It is a perfect existence in purely ideal terms, and this mental ideal was then actualized in matter, so it becomes realized to some degree. Then Zarathustra views the existences of mind and matter as two parts of our current reality. So we have both a mental component and a physical component. And this physical existence, or our current reality, is a matrix for our spiritual growth through free will and through our choices, which we'll talk about a bit more today together. This spiritual growth comes from the quest for Asha, or truth, in both the dimensions of the physical and material, and the mental and the spiritual. But what is truth? How is it defined? Let's dive into this a little bit more together. Asha is the best good. In the material or physical world, truth is what's accurate, what fits. It's the laws that govern the universe. Things, basically forms of science that we know today, physics, chemistry, biology, the natural order of things. This is one of those areas where it's very unique that Zarathustra's message is very compatible with modern day understanding and is in a sense timeless, because we are taught to keep searching for the truth, for what is right in our physical world. And we embrace wisdom and science and knowledge. In the mental world of ideas, truth is what is right for all of existence. It has a moral component, so it is often also translated as righteousness in its purest form. In the Gathas, this includes notions such as goodness, justice, generosity, compassion, loving kindness. In essence, all of the things, the ideal order of things in the world of mind and spirit. So Asha is the relationship of all things in perfect harmony, such that nothing occurs at the expense of something else. It includes modern day notions, again, being very timeless, such as social justice, that no one should be prospering at the cost of someone else. And this extends out to our environment. We shouldn't be progressing at the expense of destroying our earth or having other harmful effects. So Asha in summary here is the best good. It is the perfect, true, entirely good, ideal order of existence. So one more slide here on Asha, and again, you'll understand, I think, why it's such a pivotal core component of Zarathustra's message, is Zarathustra urges us to seek the truth in all aspects of existence, with every thought, word, and deed. This is how we grow ourselves. And this is emphasized in the foundational prayer that many Zoroastrians will know, called Ashem Vuhu. Ashem Vuhu translates, in this case, Asha is translated as righteousness. But again, I would ask you to think of its complete meaning we just talked about in the last couple slides. Whereas righteousness is the best good. It is radiant happiness. Radiant happiness comes to the person to whom righteousness is for the sake of the best righteousness alone. And here's the key part, which I think really sets Zarathustra's message really uniquely apart in today's worldviews. He's saying that we should be searching for the truth and do the right thing when we find it, not for fear of some kind of punishment, of a hell or a bad karma, or not because we want a reward or go to heaven, really just because it is the right thing to do and only for its own sake. And what's interesting about this, he calls this radiant happiness. He says if we're succeed at this, if we really look and focus at truth for the sake of truth alone, this leads to radiant happiness, being in an enlightened state that naturally radiates to others and grows and becomes better. So earlier when we were starting the talk, I was playing just background music with Pharrell's Happy song, which some of you may have heard. It's a nice popular song. And Pharrell says, happiness is the truth. And I think Zarathustra would respond and say, yes, and truth is happiness, right? So I thought that was like a cool play on modern thoughts that I think is very compatible with Zarathustra's message here. One other cool quick side note here is this is I believe the oldest extant Zoroastrian text that we know of today. It's Ashembuhu written in Sogdian, which is an Eastern Iranian language, and it was found in Dunhuang, China, I believe from the 9th century. So again, just to emphasize how far Zarathustra's ideas did spread, that this was found all the way in China over 1,000 years ago. So next, we'd like to talk about how Zarathustra's message comes into our ways of being. And I love Dr. K.D. Irani's framing for this around moral vectors. In a lot of his talks and a lot of his writings that I've learned so much from, he really presents our reality, Zarathustra presents our reality as a conflict between two diametrically opposed ways of being. The Avestan word is manu. And I think there's various translations. Some translate this as mentality, some translate this as mind, or I like Dina McIntyre's translation. It resonates with me of a way of being in its entirety. And I think there's a lot of evidence on her website to go and understand that. And that's linked here in the deck. But really, if we think about it, here is one of the Gothic verses that really hits this home. And I wanted to share it with you. And again, let's think about this together and discuss it more. Now, the two foremost manus, known to be imaginary twins, are the better and the bad in thoughts, words, and deeds. Now, when the two mentalities first got together, they created life and not living. So the better mentality, or the better way of being, is spenta manu. And this is the vector that promotes asha. So this central concept that we were all just talking about together. And this moves us towards the light so that we can make better choices. Light illumination enables us to see, to make conscious choices. Again, one of the core messages in Zarathustra's teachings. This brings us towards the best existence. And the opposite, or moving away, maybe I'm not going to say opposite, but moving away from this is a more destructive way of being. And it moves away from asha, it moves away from the light. And I think what's really interesting about some of these framings is that, this is mentioned as being two imaginary twins, right? So twins are part of, they basically exist in one container, right? So that if you think about this, twins come from one place, one container. So these are two different ways of being or perspectives. Later, this gets translated and personified as a binary dualist theology where good is versus evil. You have an all good deity, a god, and you have an all bad devil of some sorts. But this is not the message we see in the Gathas, which I think is very profound and interesting, where the struggle is, again, occurring in this one container, and that's the individual via our choices. So I think this is a very key distinction and interesting idea for Zarathustra's philosophy. I'd love for you to all think about as we dive deeper. So that leads to how we grow and why these ways of being matter. So spiritual growth occurs through free will. The universe is to be understood as a potentially ideal evolution, and through the virtue of our free will, there's the possibility of moving towards goodness, towards asha, or away from it. And Zarathustra proposes that the world is capable of being perfected by the actions of humans by reason of their capacity of moral choice. So it is through our experiences with the law of consequences that comes in through asha that enables us to utilize free will to choose, to learn, and grow spiritually, both at an individual level and a collective level. Through free will, we can iteratively, over time, slowly comprehend and realize asha, and we'll get to some of these components in a minute to discuss the framework more. But once we realize this, we are now bringing to be the entirely good, true order of existence. And such that there is evil or harmful ways are only existing from Zarathustra's perspective in the individual. If we are choosing the more progressive, the more beneficial path, we can basically banish evil from existence because it will not be manifested in our material world. This is why the importance of the well-known Zoroastrian motto, many of you may have heard of it, is good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. Good here is in line with asha, is basically us driving beneficial thoughts, constructive thoughts, things that bring us closer towards asha. I wanted to reflect for a moment with all of you. It was interesting. I was talking about this with my 7-year-old son this morning. He was asking me, what am I going to do today? I'm going to give a talk, about what? And, I said a little bit about philosophy, and he knows Hashem Vuhu as a concept. We talk about it. And, he was asking, he's like, what does this all mean? Right. And like, I used the word wisdom. I said, we're in the search of wisdom. And he's like, well, what does wisdom mean? And I explained it to him a little bit, going through some of the same concepts here. And I thought it was amazing. The mind of a 7-year-old. He reflected that this is like being a scientist for your own life. And I said, yes, exactly. I was so happy. I was like, I'm going to use this in my talk today. Like he totally grokked this as a 7-year-old, which was amazing to me, and kind of reinforces this idea that this message is timeless. It really does resonate with our modern day and age. And I think this was part of the genius of Zarathustra's philosophy. So how do we realize the divine, or what is the path for realization of the divine? So Zarathustra's philosophy is constructed on several abstract concepts. They are divine aspects of Ahura Mazda and a framework through which the divine is known and realized. They're essentially attributes, but also what's amazing, and I think again very unique, is Zarathustra says that we can attain these qualities ourselves. So the foundational component is Asha that we've already talked about, the ultimate truth, the ideal, entirely good form of existence. Then next we have what Zarathustra calls Vahumana, which translates often as good mind. This is our ability, the divine within, if you will, that allows us to comprehend Asha, or the truth, and recognize the disparity between the ideal and the real. It is our instrument of moral cognition, and as some might call this our conscience. This allows us to be awake and conscious and learn from the choices we're making throughout our daily lives. As we keep learning and be a scientist for our own lives, as my son was saying, we slowly start embodying truth. And this is the next divine aspect here, Spenta Armaiti. This, again, in terms of linguistics, might have various translations. Some people might translate this as serenity, some as devotion, some as piety. I love Gina McIntyre's proposal here around embodied truth. And I think they are actually all compatible if you think about it. Because as you embody truth, or Asha, through our thoughts, words, and deeds, it is characterized by benevolence, by devotion, by love, by serenity. I think this is where you kind of are characterized at the end of the day. You reach this peace that is very, very amazing and beautiful, personally. It's something that sounds like a worthy path to be taking for myself. Building upon this are the other divine aspects. So once you are embodying truth, once this rules over your existence entirely, or sorry, not entirely, but rules over your existence, this is called Vohu Khashatra, or the good rule. This is the rule of truth, of Asha. It's utilizing the comprehension and embodying that in our daily lives. And it brings through the individual and then through the collective society, an ideal, purely good society, looking at realizing Asha completely here. And as this builds, we reach the next level of completeness, or Horvatat. Horvatat is then the complete attainment of Asha, or the truth, perfectly and completely for all existence. And this is what's an amazing, I think, again, separation or distinction, I would say, for Zarathustra's philosophy. This has to happen for all existence for us to reach wholeness, right? We need to progress all of existence, making us whole. And what I thought was beautiful is I found this quote from another Iranian philosopher poet, Rumi, who you may have all heard, thousands of years later. And he has this beautiful poem. It says, you are not, the ocean, you are not a drop in the ocean, but you are the entire ocean in a drop. I'm not sure if everyone can read that, but that's basically the quote here. And I thought that was a beautiful illustration of a similar idea. And again, showing how thousands of years later, ideas could be very compatible, because this is intrinsic to us. Again, there is this internal understanding and awareness, which I think is, again, unique about Zarathustra's message. Once we have reached completeness, the final aspect here, if you will, is amaritat, or non-deathness. This is a state of immortal bliss where we transcend mortal existence. Since mortal existence is our kind of mechanism or matrix for growth, once we have reached completeness, we become one with the divine and no longer need that matrix. And we have now transcended mortal existence and reach endless lights. Endless lights is a metaphor Zarathustra uses that I believe is very beautiful. It just makes so much sense to me. Again, thinking about light and illumination leading to us making conscious choices, making choices that improve our existence, that understands the interconnectedness of all of us. When we have endless lights, we have reached that state of existence where we are just purely good. And it's just such a beautiful analogy for me personally. Love to hear about what you all think about these as we get into the discussion. So these are the attributes of the divine. And let's talk a little bit more about how Zarathustra describes the divine. In addition to the attributes, the divine aspects we just went through, Zarathustra's name for the divine gives us a way to understand the nature more and more. Again, I think there are various translations of this. A lot of times you will see Ahura Mazda translated as Lord Wisdom or the Wise God. But in this case, if you look at the Shahnameh from the Persian Ferdowsi poet, he will say the God of life and wisdom, or the Lord of life and wisdom, which I think resonates well with me. And if we think about, I love Dina McIntyre, again, her framing here around Ahura means Lord, but Lord of what? And she has a great framing with evidence again on her website backing this up that says, Lord is one who is Lord over the divine aspects that we just covered, which includes non-deathness. So that is lordship over life and mortality, in addition to Mazda, which means wisdom and is another word for reality. Another word for enlightenment. I apologize. And so realizing the divine through the divine aspects, through the thoughts, words, and actions of Asha is enlightenment and subsequently wisdom personified. So the way that Zarathustra explains the divine is both Ahura and Mazda, which means having the ability and the wisdom of the divine aspects. And that also, again, profoundly for me, is that it includes helping others to attain them so we can reach wholeness and completeness. I want you to hold that thought for a moment, because on the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit more about this. And it's a really interesting thought around how important it is that we're helping others. So Zarathustra has a huge innovation here around what makes a being divine. And we'll talk about this a little bit more, but the paradigm of his day and of many religions today is that basically it's what a being is what makes it divine or a god, right? It's the fact that they have power over us. And Zarathustra comes in and says, no, it's who a being is. It's the nature, right? It is what a being is, the nature of the being that makes it divine and worthy of worship. And the fact that Ahura Mazda is the personification of wisdom, the best good, the best existence. This is why we should seek and revere and worship Ahura Mazda. Not because of the power held over us, not because of fear of hell or the wish that we would like to gain favor, go to heaven, have rain come in the fields, or whatever other things people might wish for. But we worship Ahura Mazda because it is the only thing worthy of reverence as the ideal of goodness. And I think a really beautiful thought in the Gathas is worship is through the theater of our lives, right? We're worshiping through love, through partnership and embodiment of the divine aspects that we just talked about, which reinforces them as a framework for our spiritual growth and evolution. So to recap, the nature of the divine, according to Zarathustra, is beneficial, wholly good. It means to be enlightened through the realization of Asha, this ideal state of existence, and helping others to become enlightened and join that. So that leads us to human purpose and growth. And as we think about this, in the Gathas, the purpose of life is to evolve or grow from a conflicted state of being that is a mixture of harmful and more beneficial to a state of being that is completely, wholly good and beneficial. This is the state of Harvatat, or completeness again that we've been talking about. A lot of what I'm trying to do with this introduction here is like reinforce the concepts so that we can really grasp them. As a quick side note, I want to say, I think one of the challenges maybe for some people, at least I faced this when I was a teenager and trying to really understand Zarathustra and his message, is all of these Avestan terms, right? They're in this language, it's almost 4,000 years old. It's hard, there's different translations. So I think as we look and build them together as a framework, it's really resonated more for me here. So the purpose of existence, according to Zarathustra, is that we are striving towards this completeness through getting to the state of complete goodness, of whole perfected state. And if we think about this is very interesting. For context, we just mentioned that Zarathustra's society operated, had a variety of religions, and this society operated on a paradigm of fear, very similar to some of the religions today. You worship the god, like we said, because there was power held over you. The interesting point that I was looking up the word religion today when my son again asked about the question around religion and philosophy. Religion is defined as belief in a superhuman being that controls things over us, right? So again, this is a really interesting perspective because I think Zarathustra rejects or changes this perspective and presents a different worldview. He's shifting this view of a fear-based paradigm where natural calamities, sickness, poverty, these things are punishments from gods, that we've done something that we now are receiving some kind of punishment, or we haven't done something, we haven't worshipped correctly or given the right gifts or worked through the right priests. And this is something that is, again, very profound and innovative. So this paradigm of fear is precisely what Zarathustra rejects, and he proposes a new way of looking at our reality. He presents the divine as entirely good, wholly beneficial, a friend whose existence is the true, correct order of existence. The way that our reality is ordered through Asha, it includes the law of consequences, which again could mean that some things will happen that we didn't want them to happen. And it might feel challenging or difficult at times. But this is all a way for us to learn through free will and through our choices. Given our good mind, given our ability to comprehend truth, when we experience harmful or bad consequences of a choice, it increases our understanding and compassion. So this isn't punishment. This isn't us needing to go and ask them for forgiveness and ask the priest and say, hey, I've paid you this or I've done this, and now you can gain the favor with the deity as an intermediary for me. What this is actually saying is that we are responsible for our choices ourselves, and we are responsible for the reflection and the growth and the change that comes from those choices. And similarly, beneficial choices are then reinforced, and we also learn from those. Again, this has been amazingly liberating for me personally, right? It gives me a framework where I feel I can approach every situation I'm in life and think about, without fear, okay, what did I do? What were the results? How do I learn from this and grow? And were the results what I had wanted? And is it the way that things should be? Again, to quote my son, this is being a scientist for your own life, right? I think, again, just profound to hear this come out of his mouth. So just to reinforce here, mortal existence is the matrix that enables the experiences necessary for our spiritual growth and to realize Ashan, the divine. So as we're kind of wrapping up the end of the philosophy here, and again, viewing this as just an introduction, so I'm really excited to get into the discussion and for us to learn from each other. What does all of this tell us about the relationship between humankind, people, and the divine? In the Gathas, the relationship between the divine and us is not authoritarian. This is, again, a beautiful, unique aspect of Zarathustra's message. It is not described as that of a master to a slave or servant, nor a parent to a child. This relationship is described as a friend to a friend, an ally and a partner. It switches that fear-based paradigm around completely. And this is a paradigm based on mutual love, on interconnectedness. We are our own saviors, utilizing the divine within. And again, thinking back to good conscience and us needing to awaken to the divine within, to the interconnectedness of all things. And use the divine aspects as a framework for realizing this divine. Again, that Zarathustra says we can attain all of these qualities completely. It will take us time. I'm a work in progress. I don't know anyone who's quite gotten there yet, but that's the beauty of this journey, right? We're working through growth and learning. And what's again an amazing thought here is we can't do this on our own. It's impossible to advance ourselves spiritually, to learn from divine values being expressed in material words without making our material world also a better place. Which leads to one of my favorite Gothic verses, Yasna 38.9, which says, "Therefore may we be those who shall heal this world." And there's again various translations of this. Some might say improve, progress, perfect. I think the gist of the meaning is still there, but I think heal makes sense to me and says healing from what? Healing, progressing, again, improving is from the disparity we see between the real and the ideal. So between reality and Asha. It's us looking and realizing Asha. And through the divine aspects, we realize Asha and bring it to life completely and perfectly for all existence. So again, this is a wonderful thought that I think Dina has shared in one of her talks that really has inspired me, and I retain it all the time, where every time you engage in a project, however small, and that benefits other human beings, other life forms, our environment, you are partnering with wisdom and the divine and being a healer of existence. This is again reinforcing that message on the previous slide. We are in Persian we say, you're the co-workers of God. We are the allies. We are here to work together and make existence better. And this helps us realize Zarathustra's idea that humankind and God are part of the same whole. So once we have realized this, once we have reached this state of understanding and consciousness and enlightenment, we reach the endless lights and we have become one with the divine, which I think is a very beautiful idea. So in summary, I know there was a lot of information in the last 30 or so minutes. Again, I'm hoping this spurs a discussion that we can have together and we all learn from each other. I think Aryan, who's on the call, always says this, and I think it's a beautiful thought as well. And the order here matters, right? In thoughts, words, and deeds, right? He always says, and says, we think things, and so that we can think about Ashan, the ideal existence. Then we speak about it with our friends, and that's what we're doing here. And then we go off and we do things in the world to make it better. So that's what I'm hoping to do all together. In summary, just to kind of recap the core principles here, Zarathustra is teaching us a practical spiritual philosophy focused on improving existence, but through self-realization, which is realization of the divine, actually, right? So we're understanding the divine within and growing that. And to recap, core concepts here are goodness and truth. The divine is wholly good, beneficial, our friend and ally. We're not being punished. We're not being held power over us by the divine. We're here to work with the divine and reach the wholly good order of existence, the way existence should be. That happens through free will and growth. Human beings are free to choose, to learn from our choices, to adjust and grow and realize Asha through our thoughts, words, and deeds, being a scientist for our own lives, right? And that's how we realize wisdom. We're using all the divine aspects which are attainable by us as we seek to realize truth and wisdom, and mortal existence, our material world, is the matrix for this spiritual growth. And that happens when we heal all of existence. We do this by actively engaging life and helping others to grow. Again, what's amazing here is there's no like personal salvation here. You're not just saving yourself. We can't do this in isolation by rejecting the world. We have to engage the world and make everything and everyone better. And that reaches us to the completeness, where we understand, where we realize the divine and understand that we are parts of the same whole, progressing our existence to be entirely good and transcend our current mortal existence and reach the endless lights. So with that, I thank you all very much. I wanted to make a quick acknowledgement here. I will share this deck with anyone who would like it, or we can coordinate through CCC of how to share it. there are some links from the amazing scholars. Again, this has been largely a compilation of work from Gina McIntyre, and I'm so honored that she is here today. From her website and her seminar from CCC as well. Dr. Katie Irani and Dr. Jafari also have some amazing resources for us to look at. And there's also the CCC PR website that is linked here for anyone who would like to learn more. And with that, I wanted to spend time and learn from each other. So I'd love to get started in a discussion. And again, please think of this as a thought catalyst. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Navid. That was so enlightening and refreshing and beautiful. Thank you so much. We're open for questions, discussions. You can either put the questions in the chat box or just unmute yourself.
I think Manik has his hand up. Manik, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to ask about, okay, so we follow very good presentation, first of all, and very, very understandable and, you know, kind of analog, committed to the message that Zarathushtra is trying to give us. Now, in our practical life, you know, knowing all these things to be good, to make others good, not to make people or anyone suffer. Now, today, you know, we eat meat, okay, and that meat mostly comes from factory farms, you know, huge enterprises where chickens and pigs are, you know, pushed into very, very small quarters. You know, some of them are on top of each other and very brutally treated. Quite often, you know, pictures have been taken by the Humane Society and all that. And so should we then continue to eat that meat, okay, if we are going to follow the philosophy of Zarathushtra, not to make anything suffer?
I think this is an excellent question. Sorry, I didn't recognize from the hand raise, but Mobile Bourgeois, I really appreciate you asking this. And I'd like to treat this as a discussion, so please don't feel like this is a Q&A traditionally. I think if anyone else has ideas and responses to Mobile Bourgeois' thought, I'm happy to share my thought, which is, I think you're spot on. Again, I think part of Zarathustra's teachings are that we should be conscious. We should seek the truth, seek what is right. And I don't think that personally eating, you know, the meat of a tortured animal, let's say, or a situation is good. And that's, again, a personal choice for me. And I think we are supposed to think these thoughts, speak them together, and then choose our choices, make our choices, right? And I think that process is what we're encouraged to do. I think on a personal level for me, like I've done a lot of research actually on this myself, and this is why I choose to eat meat, but I choose to personally buy my meat from exclusive ranchers here in Northern California where I live, local to me. I know how they're raised. I buy, you know, cow, chicken, pork, whatever it is. And again, I think, but then this is a path for us all to learn and grow and really discuss these things with ourselves so that we can enact that change, right? I'm also a big personal fan that we need to be calling out the wrong in the world, that factory farming for the sake of commercial gain maybe is not right, and be change makers, if you will, for that through our daily lives. So I think it's an excellent point. I'd love to hear other folks' thoughts as well.
Arman has his hand up as well. Go ahead, Arman.
Navid, thank you so much for this incredible presentation.
Thank you, Arman.
I loved it. I believe that, and it was so short actually, and I think it would be a great tool for the many inquiries we get, you know, students, college students who want to learn more about our religion, to simply forward this to them, as we already do with some materials that we have prepared. Of course, if we have your consent, and Artemis can, you know, at the right person to be forwarded, that would be great. In terms of the meat, I really appreciated Manik's input. My take on it is that one of the things that makes Zarathustra's message timeless it basically has no expiration date.
Yep.
It is that there is nowhere that you know, this is don't eat that, eat this, walk this way, don't walk that way. So many religions which consider themselves progressive, such as the Mormons, they have actually a prophet at any given time. They have a prophet who is alive, and he could actually come out and anytime and say, actually, you know what, coffee is good for you, start drinking coffee. We don't have that. It's what makes the Gathas so amazing is that it doesn't have an expiration date. What if suddenly we have we can actually make meat without animal, as I'm sure you heard about it, that meat can be actually produced without having to slaughter any animal. It's the same meat, it's made in a lab, it's actually even healthier with less cholesterol possibly. So what would happen if once we start adding amendments to the Gathas? What happens if we start making up amendments to the message? And that can go on, and in about 200 years, you may not even recognize it anymore, as it has been for the past 4,000 years. So one thing that my message to my boys is that we just, if there's a war, we just don't go there. And my argument with my sons is that, number one, there's too few numbers of us left. We are probably the smallest minority in the world. We cannot afford going to battlefields, killing others and getting killed ourselves. And you see what happened in Afghanistan, 20 years of war, $2 trillion, and we left like nothing happened. The Taliban are back in power. So my message to my sons regarding going to war is inspired by Zarathustra's message. But I make sure that I tell my sons, Zarathustra never said, don't go to war in those words. So I think that our understanding of the free will, the free agency, actually, as the Mormon call it, we have it, they picked it up, I think, from us, they call it free agency. And that's what we have. In Zoroastrianism, we have a free agency, free way of thinking. The ability to understand, analyze the message is, that's what makes it even more difficult, right? We talked about this I remember when my kids were younger, they told their friends in my presence, do you know why I'm a Zoroastrian? Because it's so easy, I had to bring it to their attention that actually, in religions where you have 10 commandments or you have rules, is much easier. You know what to do, what not to do.
Yep.
And that's the issue with the meat, right? Being, a vegetarian or not. I have had, when I was actually on the board at the center, I did have a small group of Zoroastrians who came in and they wanted to have a presentation, and they were kind of a very extreme form of vegetarians, and they came in with a lot of banners and pictures of slaughterhouses and all that, which is gross, and I absolutely agree with them. But at the same time, I think what makes Zarathustra's message timeless is that free agency. Sorry for the lengthy, reply, but that was my 2 cents.
No, I think it's an outstanding point, Arman John. And again, thank you, Manek, for the question. I think I like to say this all the time, is that Zarathustra's giving us a framework for how to think. He's not telling us what to think. Why give us reason? Why give us the intellect if we're going to be, robots and just obey, right? So I think this is, again, you're spot on. This is what makes Zarathustra's message timeless. Absolutely. Firdosh, you had a question as well? I'd love to hear it. Or a thought?
I'm sorry, there might be some double sound coming, but
Oh, no worries.
I made sure it's not from my side. I want to try and share my learning with relation to Manik Gujwala's question about quote-unquote vegetarianism as kind of from the perspective of what Zarathustra teaches us in taking a life, etc. I don't know if most of us know that from a religious point of view, the strictest vegetarianism I have come across, and this is just my thoughts, could be wrong, is Jainism. Because they will not even just eat leafy vegetable, etc., fruits. Forget about any kind of meat or even eggs or etc., etc. They will not even eat vegetation that grows underground, like peanuts, carrots, potatoes, etc. The logic being that when you pull them out, you destroy a lot of other living microbes and other things by which it is not good for Jainism. So when at one of these interfaith conferences, I asked a Jain friend of mine, I said, hey, if this is what you guys say that you cannot eat, fine, you don't want to, it's okay. But how can my brother in the Arctic Circle called the Eskimo can ever become a Jain? Because he cannot see vegetation for hundreds of miles in any direction. He has to kill to eat, survive. So he gave me a very good understanding, and hopefully that might give you an answer from there. And he explained to me that Jainism comes from the word Jain, which is a compounded term of two words, Jai and Ain. Jai is victory, and Ain is your senses. So it is victory over your senses. And the senses then tell you that your survival is okay as long as you hurt the other creature or living organ which has the least amount of senses. So if it is a sense of touch, sense of smells, and the least amount of senses that you use to destroy that creation, which you then do for your support. So from that point of view, you have made a sense that, hey, if eating vegetables and fruits is going to help us survive, why do I need to eat animals, which is a higher level of sense? And this is what then justifies the Eskimo to do that, because they do not have those other vegetation, etc., available. And from their point of view, that is the victory over the least amount of senses that they have to destroy in the fish they have to eat. Hope that makes sense. I love this. I love the explanation.
Divya and Dolat have their hands up too. If we could keep everything at a level so everyone has a chance to talk, that would be great. Divya, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to Navid for the talk. I learned a lot. I have a question. You said something about free will and how we use our free will to make choices. But if there's people out there that don't have that choice to have free will, that have to follow a certain religion and have to do it by the book or listen to their family members, how are they supposed to gain wisdom if they're supposed to do everything in the correct way according to their beliefs? How are they supposed to learn or grow? I just wanted to know.
Yeah, Divya, I think this is a beautiful question. Oh, sorry, was someone else going to answer? Please go ahead. No? Okay. Yeah, I think this is a great question. I think this is maybe why the framework itself actually makes a lot of sense, right? So we can, the only existence or being we can control initially is ourselves. So I think it starts with ourselves, in my personal opinion, is that we need to, again, understand Asha, comprehend it, use our good mind, then start to embody it with our thoughts, words, and deeds, and then look to spread that collectively with others and be the change in the world that we know needs to happen. So I think these areas where you don't have the choice, right? When you don't live in an environment where you can choose what you would like to do. I think these are those wrongs in the world that we must speak out against, I think. And it starts with ourselves. And then we have to build coalitions, we have to build alliances and figure out the right way to change existence or change our current reality to get to the better state. The fact that, you know, a young girl living under Taliban, as Armanjo was referring to, can't go to school. This is clearly, to me, wrong, right? My parents escaped a revolution where, again, similar freedoms were taken from them in Iran, right? So this is, I think you're absolutely right. And I think it is part of our recognizing and changing the world as part of Asha is us going and actually calling out the things that should be different. This is a disparity between the real and the ideal, right? I think it's absolutely spot on.
Thank you. Dolat had her hand up. Please go ahead, Dolat.
Hello, thank you so much for your time. And this was a really enlightening experience. I'm glad to be here with you all. And I guess the couple of things that I'm not sure if I have a question or I'm just kind of collecting what we're talking about here. I mean, one thing that I really appreciate about the teachings is the fact that they're to respect and honor other people's truth. Whatever whatever, my friend is able to see with given his experiences and his or her way of thinking. And so this idea of one religion being superior to the other, I don't know, to me, it just feels not exactly aligned with the teaching, other than I can be the light and be able to carry the light. Like our friend was describing like Jainism and how they describe the vegetarian. That's very enlightening. That's helpful to understand. So I guess that's the piece that I'm gathering here, because that's one of the things that sometimes as a result of centuries of trauma, this push to want to be superior and best and nobody can be like us really actually goes against what I think the original message is in my humble experience. So I'm just really grateful that we get to see that in here as well, that we're willing to kind of allow for more understanding and collectively we get to learn from each other. And the other piece that I want to just quickly say, in terms of when there's so much huge trauma, I mean, tremendous trauma. I was 12 when the revolution happened. So, the air you breathe is trauma. That it's also, what I'm learning is if I begin within me, if I touch the Taliban inside of me, that wants, for example, my daughters to behave a certain way that is only because I think it should be that way, or even within me, when I have so many shoulds and yes and no's. I mean, sometimes even if I want to choose how to file my file system, I have to go find the exact, precise, correct way. So the perfectionism within me, to me, it serves as the tyrant. So if I can begin to look at myself and expanding, I actually believe that's also aligned with the teachings, that as we begin to bring light to the dark within us, it's also expanding around us. Now, this doesn't mean I'm going to just sit at home and do nothing and just let whoever does whatever. But I think to really keep that in mind, to be able to really look at myself first I love, so I'm just kind of gathering the pieces that everybody is saying so far that really suits so well to my heart. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Talat. I think that is very thought-provoking and resonates strongly with me as well. I think it's interesting, two quick thoughts is, I really started learning, the details and the meaning of Zarathustra's message as a teenager when I was interested in philosophy and like existence and, maybe unusually so for a teenager, but I started studying all the other religions. And again, I think what's unique is, and why I tend to avoid to use the word religion, again, going back to the definition of a superhuman being controlling us. That's one definition in the dictionary. But I think they also, what scared me as I studied them often was that they have this exclusivity. They have this absoluteness where it's like, this is the only path, right? And it's as if God was saying, hey, we've created you, we've given you intellect, don't use it. There's 1,000 paths, but one of them is only right. And as a teenager, this didn't make sense. And it wasn't until I found Zarathustra's message And it said, no, I'm not going to tell you what to think. I'm going to tell you how. I'm going to give you a framework. Now use it. Now talk with your friends. See what makes sense. Be modern with the times. Our understanding of how we raise meat, of how we understand the earth to be on factory farming versus regenerative farming, right? Like all these things are changes over time, right? And I think this is what's beautiful to me, is exactly as you said, is for us to be conscious, for us to be awake and think and talk these things through. Thank you. Thank you so much for that thought-provoking.
Thank you. I think Dr. Mehrava Marzban has her hand up. Go ahead.
Please.
First of all, I would like to give the flowers to Navid, who has done research for a long time. I would like you to see this. This is the flower of persimmon, khormaloo. I think no one paid attention. Look at this leaf. It's always on khormaloo, we see it, but you didn't see the flower. And this is the blossom. This is beautiful. It's a part of nature. It's a part of what Zarathushtra says, the whole nature is beautiful, has wisdom. But I will have a session because my research is on the Gathas with the language Gothic, and I didn't bring one word from anywhere else into my research, which I had my PhD with Kekhosro Irani, Ashtiani, and Professor Gary Trump. It is beyond religion, and Asha is a cosmic way of thinking, a cosmic truth, the law of the cosmos. I would like, if you have time, I will spend some time with all of you, and then I explain what did I gain in 15 years at Sydney University. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dina, please go ahead. It's so nice to have you here with us, Dina.
Thank you, Artemis. First, I'd like to express my thanks to all of you. I mean, the ideas that have been coming out are so vibrant and interesting, and I love this format of exchanging views. I'd just like to say or offer an idea of my what I have come to conclude on Manik Bhujwala's question about killing to eat. For the longest time, as I was studying Zarathustra and appreciating his idea of God who is wholly good, I simply could not reconcile myself with the idea that there was so much pain and suffering, not caused by wrongful choices necessarily, but just the way nature has been ordered. Animals killing animals to eat, humans killing animals to eat. Even if you pull a plant out of the earth, you're killing a life form. So just being vegetarian doesn't resolve the problem. And I simply could not reconcile myself to that aspect. I could not see how that could be Asha. But then as I lived, I noticed that all the calamities and tragedies that occurred in my life, which at the time I thought was senseless, you know, totally wrong, senseless. In the long run, they made me a better person. It took me a long time to realize that. And then I started to think that perhaps that is the explanation, or at least one explanation, of the suffering of killing to eat. The suffering that, say, a deer feels when a lion, you know, kills it to eat. The terror, the flying, the suffering. Does it teach that soul in the deer that we should not, that it should not cause that kind of suffering to another living thing? In other words, are all our sufferings experiences that make us better, that help us to change our wrongful preferences and evolve to something better. I don't know that that is the answer, but it is an answer that at least I don't feel rebellious anymore. It satisfies me because I have seen how it works in my own life. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you so much for that insight, Dina, and thank you so much for joining once again.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Thank
I
you.
learn a lot every time I listen to one of these seminars.
Behnam, I think, but you had your hand up as well. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Archimist.
No, I wanted to say exactly, Behnam, please go ahead.
Navid, thank you so much again. I had a question. I wanted to see how similar to Zoroastrian thought and vision, are there similar thought process that been around in other part of the world? Like specifically, I'm trying to see how much similarity is it between Zoroastrianism and Taoism, the idea of yin and yang, and where the two come in together and the energy between the two. Do you have any thoughts, similarity between the two, and is the vision, is the idea the same between Zoroastrianism and Taoism?
I think this is a really interesting question, Behnam John. Thank you for asking it. So I don't know. I'm not probably the right qualified in terms of comparative religion to say, all religions or any one religion is exactly the same as Zarathustra's message here. But I can say that I think, kind of going back to Dolat's point as well, I don't think Zarathustra's message is exclusive, right? I think he is saying there is divinity within us and we need to awaken to it and we need to grow it and increase our understanding, and we need to work together and partner with the divine. So I think that message in various forms, I feel it is intrinsic. And I don't think that it's possible that you cannot see these things when you are looking for them, right? And I think Dr. Katie Irani, in one of his, I think an old CZZ talk from maybe a decade or two ago, said this. He's like, it's impossible to look injustice in the face and not see it, right? Like generally, or like something within you will speak, right? And that is, I think, your good mind. And that's what I resonate with you. So I think that this message, again, it has to be intrinsic. And again, that's what spoke to me as a teenager, was the fact that, we have to have this ability to reason within all of us. And I'd love to hear other folks' thoughts. Dina, I don't know if you have any thoughts or anyone else. I'd love to hear other folks' thoughts. This is a really interesting question.
Arya had his hand up. Arya John, do you want to say something?
Yeah. Hi. Thank you so much, Navid John. Hi. Hi. So I have a question. I have a really hard time understanding the good creation, that everything was created perfect and good and out of goodness, and that all the bad things that happen in the world, we learn from them. Because when I think about a child who has bone cancer, and that is going to kill him or her, and we can go to a children's hospital and see all of that, what's the good in that? I don't understand. Like, where's the beauty in cancer? It's in everyone, but especially in children who are born with something like cancer or a genetic disorder that is going to end their life. And I don't know, enlighten me, but I don't understand where's the good part and the beauty in that. Thank you.
No, it's a great question, Arya. Honestly, this is something I struggle with as well. My mom, who recently passed, actually, right, had fought with multiple sclerosis for 45 years, and she had it before I was born. So for me, this has always been a question, and I think my interpretation, again, there are several. I'd love to again hear from other folks if time permits, but I don't necessarily read Zarathustra's message as saying that these things are part of that good creation, right? What I read him saying. So this is also a distinction compared to other, religions, quote unquote. revealed religions often tend to have all the answers, or they have an answer to like lots of these things, generally speaking. I don't think Zarathustra presents that. I don't think he has an answer for every situation. I think he's presenting a moral spiritual philosophy and with a framework for us to grow ourselves. As Dr. Jaffer used to say, Rav Anishad is, he's focused on living, not dying, right? And not necessarily answering every other thing possible. So I don't think, the way I interpret it actually personally is that Asha is the ideal goodness that has not been fully realized in matter. And we don't necessarily understand all the whys, right? Necessarily. I don't think we have all those answers, but what we're trying to do is seek that wisdom, seek and seek the change we want for things to be good. And I think this is one of the reasons maybe why doctors in Zoroastrian communities are highly revered, right? I think we are often, I mean, amongst many other cultures, of course, but I think eradicating disease, right? Preventing these horrible experiences, I think is part of that change that we are realizing, Asha, in my viewpoint, right? And I think it's a very worthy cause to go after.
May I add just one little thing to that, please?
Yes.
So this is something that is very personal to me because right after, when I was born, something happened to me. A doctor made a mistake and I became hydrocephalic. So I spent 8.5 years, the first 8.5 years of my life in and out of hospitals. So much stress on my family, so much just, it was terrible. And when I ever heard that people were saying, oh, that was a miracle and now you're a better person,
yeah,
that made me just so angry. Like, do you even realize what we went through? Like, all the trauma, all the pain, all the financial burden, and I'm going to be hydrocephalic for the rest of my life. So I don't understand, like, where's the lesson? Like, somebody was trying to teach me a lesson and now I'm a better person. So yeah, that's something that is, it doesn't sit well with me.
No, Arya, I completely agree with you. Again, I don't read Zarathustra's message as this. Again, so I think other viewpoints, other religions that believe everything is sourced from God and it's being controlled. And again, it's God's will. A common thing we hear, right, in Persian languages, it's God's will, or did God will it? I don't think this is my belief. I don't think this is part of Zarathustra's message. I don't think God is sitting up there as the puppet master controlling every single action that occurs in the universe. And I think what frees me, gives me this piece, is Zarathustra's innovation is saying that he is not the source of that suffering, or God, or the divine, if you will. But again, that's my interpretation. I think it's a very valid question. I think we don't have the answer. I think that begs the question then, why the suffering, right? And I think there's a variety of thoughts, and maybe one we could discuss deeper together. It's a big topic, and I think it's spot on.
Manik, go ahead, please.
Okay. Yeah, I like the question or comment that Daulat made about comparing religions. The thing is that I also have been thinking that, how can we say my religion is superior to the other religion when we have not even studied the original words of the prophet or founder of the other religion. We are not experts on that, and we haven't studied the original. What we often take as religion is what our limited experience has been in observing, the way certain people, followers, of that supposedly call themselves particular religious people, how they follow and practice, and what they say in the name of religion, in the name of God, they say, oh, this is what this is right, and that's what I'm going to practice. But have we really studied the words of the original people, like say Jesus Christ or even Muhammad, do we know the original, and especially the basic principles, that these founders have expressed? From what little I know, I think I see a lot of similarity, if not exactly the same thing, the same principles, honesty, truth, charity, kindness, justice, all those things. And the thing is that what we see are the ideologies, or the interpretations of religion that different people practice and make, So we really do not have that right to be saying, that, okay, our religion is better than the other and all. When I went to give a talk on Zoroastrianism at the Bishop Montgomery High School in Torrance, I told the students that, look, in order to look for the truth, you don't have to convert from your religion to any other religion. Just look deep inside what your prophet told, what are the principles he taught you, and you will find that, kind of thing. So, and of course, just like Navid said, we really don't know the answers to many things, and there are many things. We know a very little bit of knowledge, even that scientist Isaac Newton said that all of our human knowledge is like a grain of sand in the Sahara Desert, So we have to have that humility to accept that we know very little about many things, But that's all.
Thank you so much. This shows, Navid, that actually you accomplished, your thoughts were very thought-provoking,
Yes.
and the questions and comments are coming in. So if everyone is okay, I have Ferdosh, Arman, and then Mehravar, and maybe we can continue this at a second session for you, Navid-Jan.
That'd be wonderful.
Go ahead, Ferdosh.
Thank you. I will try to be brief. I'm trying to again see a different perspective than what Mike and Nolat just talked about. And I want to stick to our scripture and the Zoroastrian way of understanding through our philosophy. In the Jasame Avange Mazda prayer, which is essentially what we call the confession of faith, where I tell myself, this is what it is, and this is what I want to follow, etc. What do I say over there? I'm a Mazda worshipper. I profess myself a Mazda worshipping follower of Zoroaster or Zarathustra. And then I proceed to say, I praise the true conceived thought, spoken word, and a well-done deed. I praise the excellent religion of Mazda worship. We do admit to ourselves it is the excellent religion. And then we say, which is quarrel removing, weapons lowering, self-dedicating and holy. Which of those that are and those that shall be hereafter is the greatest, the best, the most excellent, which is the religion of Ahura revealed by Zarathustra. Now, what I want to explain to you, when I say all that, I'm not being arrogant. I am humble. That yes, because we have to understand the grammar and juxtaposition of the sentences, because I already started in the first line. I profess myself. So all of these that I'm talking about, excellent and the best, is for me. I'm not saying it is for you or anybody else. You have to figure out what is best for you or anybody else. Just essentially understand. So yes, and if I didn't think my Zarathustra's religion was the best, why would I be Zarathustra? If there was some other religion that I think it was better, I should be that. But for myself, please understand, this is an introspective looking at the goodness of Zarathustra's philosophy. And coming to the business about the yin yang that was brought up with the understanding, I think it was Raman who talked about Taoism. Well, I have read those, I have tried to study, and I wondered what the yin yang sign would be for us Zarathustras. What is our sign? I figured out from our scripture where it says there is nothing common between good and evil. Each one is totally separate and works to do what it wants to do. You choose between them. So our quote unquote yin yang sign for Zarathustras would be a circle with a vertical line in the middle half of it completely black, half of it completely white. Those two do not merge like the yin and yang, where the good tries to move into the black and white, and there is a little black in the white. That's just an interpretation of the yin. And yeah, for you, I sincerely pray and feel that I hope you do show us that miracle and get well. And however, you know what you're doing to me? I heard the story about you. You are giving me that inspiration that even if it's something that has not done successful on you, you are giving me that direction that there could be success with me. And that is what I did in my life when I went through so many issues. And I was asked when I signed up for the double-blind study, where my doctor also did not know what medication I'm going to put inside me. And I was asked during the questionnaire, why do you want to do this? Because we almost sign our life away. We cannot sue the companies or medical system at all. And my answer to them was, even if it doesn't work on me, even if this whole experiment, my going for 6 months of checking myself out every week is a useless thing and nothing works. The important thing is that the information that we glean out of this can be useful to somebody. That is a Zarathushtra thing to do, as far as I am concerned.
Thank you, Firdaus. Arman Jan, 1 or 2 minutes, please. You're muted, Arman. You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to reflect on comments made by Dolat, Arya, and Behnam. We live in an Abrahamic world. So even if we are indigenous Zoroastrians, we see every issue kind of from that perspective, because everywhere you go, that's what we are surrounded with. In Europe, in Americans, in the Middle East. So one of them is why is so much pain in the world? If there is a God, why is there that's a very, I think, a very Abrahamic notion. The other one is comparative religion. My religion is better than yours. My God beats yours, and so on. I believe Zoroastrianism is very different. I agree with Navid that Zoroastrianism is exclusive and it cannot be compared. Zoroastrianism is not supposed to be beautiful or likable, or it's just reality. It's just facts. It's kind of like a gravity on Earth that whether you like it or not, it's there. It's about the discovery of Asha. So I don't think it can be compared to any other religion. And there is, it's not, and this is a reflection on Dolat's comment. It's, I think Zoroastrianism is the best religion in the world because it's just reality. It's factual. It's facts on the ground, and it is not like we can have an alternative truth, as one of the politicians once said. It is what it is, and we are forced to kind of compare, then we think it's politically not right if we do that, but it's not race. So a school of thought and race are two different things. If we discriminate against someone's color, culture, then that's total discrimination against that person. But a school of thought, we have a choice of understanding, thinking, and making decisions based on those thoughts. That is a choice. So I can actually discriminate against a school of thought that is not pro-Asha, that is that could hurt, that could discriminate based on color per se. So there is many times we believe that if we say we are better, or we think we compare ourselves to others, that's discrimination, but it's not. So I just wanted to add that to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Arman Jan. Mehra Vaibanu, 1 or 2 minutes, please. Go ahead.
Just, I wanted to say it is a big mistake that we take Zarathustra's vision as a religion, whether we want to compare with other religion, whether we want to say this is better or not. It is beyond religion. He is not a prophet. The Mazda is not the God. Why don't we get into the meanings and very little, 6,000 words? We have to leave religion with Zarathustra. It is a crime to call it religion, but it is beyond religion. And one of the things I want to suggest, everyone should have a smile, a part of Asha. The meditation of Asha, if we do it, if we put Asha in our thoughts, if we put the smile on our lips, on our face, on our body, that is a good meditation. We get into Asha, and we will actually take Asha, as Zarathustra said, Asha, come to me. I would like you come to me. I would like to get close to you. So with a smile, I would like to thank everyone that everyone is in research, but please don't compare with any religion. It's beyond religion. Thank you so much. And thank you, Navid.
Thank you so much. So I'm hoping to bring everything to an end. I know Nina has something to say. Nina, if you want to say it in 1 minute, and then Dolat has her hand up too. Maybe Dolat can say it in 1 minute. Nilu, 1 minute, and then we're done. We have to plan another talk for you, Navi. So Nina, go ahead. 1 minute, Dolat 1 minute, Nilu 1 minute, and then we're done. You're muted, Nina.
Way of life. It's a good way of life.
Okay, so I just wanted to share, I'm sorry, something's off with my video too, that, you know, we are challenged to see the good in everything. So when you see a child suffering, what good is it for the child? If the child survives, it'll probably change the personality of the child. The child will want to be kinder, gentler, more understanding of other people who are suffering. And if we are observing a loved one suffering, I think it teaches us patience and caring too. So in general, there is some benefit to even the suffering that we do see in the world.
Thank you, Nina. Dolat, 1 minute.
I guess there are a couple of things I'll say in 1 minute, is that, you know, it's one of the first times that wisdom comes to language and we actually as humans can connect to it. So in my world, in my understanding is that wisdom keeps echoing and moving forward. So it's not limited to just a few, and we are blessed to have access to it. And then in terms of Asha, you know, I grew up with a lot of suffering, different kind, by no means comparable, but my understanding, finally, what really helped me to understand is that Asha at one level is blind. Science is science, no matter, you know, if the, you know, kind of the idea of wrong time, wrong place, it's unavoidable sometimes. Unfortunately, many times it is avoidable. But the idea, the difference between suffering and the pain, I think that's what makes a difference. And I can never minimize anybody else's pain by any means. But the idea is that in Zarathustra's world, it's a space for growth. And some things, you know, Asha is truth, doesn't make exceptions, doesn't take, you know, U-turns anywhere. So that sometimes helps me, and it's unspeakable. Trauma happens. So thank you.
Thank you. Nilu, please go ahead. Did we lose Nilu? All right. So thank you so much, Navi. Thank you for the time, for the thought-provoking words and session. And thank you everyone for joining and adding to this wonderful talk. Navid, we have to schedule another talk for you, and I'll be sure to let everyone know. All right. Have a good Go ahead, Navid. You say the last word. And
Oh, no,
then
no, I was just going to say thank you all so much for the absolutely, engaging discussion. I learned so much from talking with you all. And thank you to Artemis and the CCPR committee for making this forum possible. I'm just so fortunate to have this discussion with you all, and just thank you so much.
Thank
Have a
you,
great
everyone.
afternoon.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.